So after witnessing the devastation federal response to Hurricane Helene, take a look at this video you're about to see here. So this is what they're doing to community members that are helping out the situation. Active members of the community responding to people in need. They're now exploiting them and squashing their relief efforts just diabolically. Listen to this. It says, disturbing. South Carolina pilot flying voluntarily supply rescue missions ordered out of Lake Lure, North Carolina, under arrest threats. A man who was a pilot and a certified law enforcement officer and a volunteer member of the fire department over the weekend went to a rescue mission with his son after being rescued. A North Carolina woman was forced to leave her husband behind because he was threatened with arrest. So, a pilot who's off in rescue missions was about to be arrested for rescuing people. And here's the news story about this. This is just devastating.
This is the original post that I was reading when I decided to go up and help. It's a long post, but she's saying that her kids and family and animals are trapped. No way out, no supplies, and the only way in or out is accessible by helicopter. Limited self-service and no water since Friday morning. I thought I have a helicopter and maybe I can help.
Jordan Sidham piled food and water into his helicopter Saturday and headed up toward Banner Elk. The only way through a mountain gap in Lake Lure.
This is the mountain valley that you would have to fly to get to Black Mountain, where we were escorting people out. This is a mountain range, and this is a mountain range. The only place to fly through with bad visibility, low cloud coverage, is Lake Lure.
The cries for help from people stranded without food, water, or electricity hit social media soon after the flooding last Friday.
But my parents are stuck there. Their address is Banner Elk. They are in the first condo. If you receive this, please give me a call back. Thank you.
Sidham's phone started lighting up on Saturday with people begging for help.
I could hear the desperation in her voice. This is multiple phone calls I've received like this, voicemails, text messages, and you could hear people desperate for help.
Sidham and his son rescued 4 people on Saturday and spent the night in a nearby pilot's lounge, then decided to fly again Sunday morning.
I spoke with my son, which is my co-pilot. I said, hey, do you want to go back out and try to help today? And his response was, there's so many messages, I don't think we can't not go help.
Sidham and his son were headed up to Black Mountain. Flight tracking shows no flight restrictions in place Saturday or Sunday morning when Sidham flew through the Lake Lure Gap. But that was all about to change. The Sidham spotted an older couple waving for help, then landed in what's left of their driveway.
Hey, I want you to let me get in. You step out and go out, help her in, put her bag in the back, get her strapped in. I'm going to take her down, come back. I'll take him, I'll come back, and then I'll get you, okay?
I originally left my son, co-pilot, on the side of the mountain. It was kind of unstable, so I didn't want to put more weight in the helicopter to lift back off. So I left my son with the other victim, and I was just going to take one person down at the time. And you could hear me in the video talking through with the victims and with my son what we're going to do.
3 minutes away, Sidham spotted a group of rescuers just down the river. He landed and found someone in charge.
Told him my background experience, law enforcement, firefighting, pilot. He immediately started helping with coordination. He gave me radio frequencies to coordinate with them on, set up a landing area for me to come back with the other victim. And in the middle of the whole conversation and then blocking the road off, I was greeted by the, at that time I didn't know, but Lake Lure fire chief or assistant chief maybe, and he shut down the whole operation. So at that point I felt like the conversation wasn't going any further, and again he asked me to leave, and I said, hey, I have no problem getting out of your area. If that's what you want us to do, we'll leave, no issue. At that point I asked him, what was the reason I had to leave them there, and he said, again, you're interfering with my operation. I just need you to get out of the area. I said, sir, I don't know where you were trained at, but I know how my training is, and I'm not going to leave personnel behind. I'm going back to get my co-pilot. He said, if you turn around and go back up the mountain, you're going to be arrested. I said, well, sir, I'm going back to get my co-pilot. I don't know what to tell you. And
so you heard it there. He was threatened with an arrest if he goes and gets his son, the co-pilot, who was trying to rescue people at a time of need. That, again, the more you see about this, the more it's so diabolical. Because this is obviously done purposely. There's intent for all this. There's an evil intention behind every single measure that they're potentially arresting a pilot that's going to these stricken counties in the Carolinas. They're desperate of food and water and shelter and communication. They're in dire need. And the pilot is about to be arrested if he goes back to get his son that he was told to leave there.
He said, I'm letting you know. And at that point, he waved for 2 law enforcement officers to come over and told me that again, if I go back up the mountain, I would be arrested.
He flew the 3-minute trip back, picked up his son, and left the woman's husband behind.
I'm sure he was flooded with emotions and trying to rescue other people, and I just felt that it was best at the time to leave. So I did follow his instructions, and I had a conversation with the female victim before I left, apologized and explained, and she was standing there. She heard the whole conversation, and they were both very, very surprised, very upset. The husband, as I was leaving off of the side of the mountain, at that point, separated from his wife, he was upset. I can only imagine.
Sidham and his nearly 1,400 flight hours turned his chopper around and headed back to South Carolina, passing people waving for help along the way.
As I was actually leaving to go back to get my son, the original chief or captain that I spoke to, his crew and himself, they came back over and said, hey man, we can't tell you to go get the victim. We can't even ask you to go get the victim, but we can tell you if you come back with the victim, we'll have you a designated landing spot, and they won't. We'll make sure they don't come over here.
So there was no flight restriction when you went in?
No flight restriction when I went in. It went in place 20 or 30 minutes after the confrontation with Mr.
You feel like that was coincidental, or do you think that was because of what happened?
I don't think it can be coincidental when there has not been one in place the day before doing rescue operations, the night of, the morning of, that took place after our altercation. I think there would have never been a TFR put in place had we not had that conversation.
Yeah, so he asked if it was coincidental that the responders there came up to this guy and say, if you're going to go back and save more people, you're going to be arrested. Coincidental leaving these people in ravaged areas to just left for dead. Because what was the alternative response to that? That would have been my follow-up question. What's the alternative response? They're saying that he's interfering with our management. They're interfering with our procedures. Well, what is your procedure? Because from what I'm understanding and what I've been observing throughout all this since the hurricane started is the lack of response. You are deliberately leaving these people hung out to dry. You are deliberately doing this to people. And when someone like this pilot wants to go out and help his fellow brothers and sisters in the affected areas, and he was not, disrupting the peace or anything like that. He was just helping that innocent lives that were affected by this, carrying them to safety, providing food and water and shelter and communication, stuff that these people need. And he was potentially almost arrested for it. And they asked if it was coincidental. I like to say that it isn't. This is intended. This is all purposely done after everything that we have covered about this hurricane. And there's even more to the story. It is by far intended by the most evil, corrupted regime in America to purposely do this, to leave these people stranded, left for dead. And as we shown earlier, that this storm was purposely modified to hit these specific areas prior to right around the time when the DOD signed on a business deal with the largest lithium extraction plant in the Carolinas. And now that these homes are permanently destroyed, these people are displaced, they have nowhere to go, all of a sudden, now that plant that they just signed a huge federal business deal with can now start extracting resources from those damaged areas. It's coincidental if you don't actually look into it. It's coincidental if you don't actually see what people are dealing with on the ground. Because if you look at all the postings that have been done about Hurricane Helene and the people, interviewing the people, seeing the people in these shelters, trying to do whatever they can to help their fellow brothers and sisters and community members all across these areas, they will all tell you it's not coincidental. That it was not just nature doing its course. That there had to be some sort of tent. There had to be some sort of tent that a hurricane came in, the worst hurricane since Hurricane Katrina. The federal government completely could not care less about the victims, completely turns a blind eye, gives them $750 in an empty promise. That's only to certain families if they leave the area. Right after a business deal was made by the DOD and the largest lithium extraction plant in the Carolinas. I think we're pretty much done with coincidences after seeing all this.